I think the only sign I really even remember was mile 10 on that run, and my thought wasn't, oh shit, 3 mile. I was more like, oh, only a 5K, and that was the first time I've ever thought that way.
The feeling you had was, I'm still in control.
Yes, that is exactly what it was.
To have that feeling, because what happens is if the longer you're able to perform, the better fitness you have, and the better decisions you make, and the better your training and the better your preparation, you can elongate the amount of time that you're in control of the race, not the race's control of you.
Good morning, Coach Robbie.
Happy Monday. Oh, wait.
Yeah, no.
You know what? Technically, man, dude, we're not really late. I mean, we consistently rock Monday and Thursday. But most people don't even listen to us on Monday and Thursday. Listen to us at their own leisure, around their own schedule, and we like that. And, we had a fairly busy weekend, and yesterday was a lot of travel, and I think you and I were just pretty smoked. And,
we're just moving ahead into the modern day, man. It's not like we're sitting around trying to wait for the Brady Bunch on Friday night these days. People do what they want when they want.
And it was either do it yesterday and produce a lackluster, tired, and exhausted podcast, or get some sleep, do a little reflection, and hopefully wake up this morning and provide a much better, higher quality podcast for all 9 of you that are tuning in today.
Yep, bringing it strong after a day of sleep.
Bringing it strong. Welcome, Crushing Iron Podcast, episode 269.
269. Ironman 70.3 Chattanooga recap.
Recap. What a weekend. Again, thank you for joining us. Please subscribe, head over to iTunes, give us a review. Let us know what you think. And we hope you tune in. But yeah, we usually do. If this is your first time listening, we've had quite a few listeners pop in for that. I think anytime we do like a 70.3 or a full Ironman kind of a race recap, people tend to dig in the archives leading up to a race. And so we've had a lot of new listeners, a lot of new people who have hopped into our Crushing Iron group, which is on Facebook. You can be a part of that. Really, I mean, it really is. It's genuinely a great conversation with really good tips, tons of experience in there, lots of wisdom, and generally just a very helpful crowd. So if you want to, if you like what we do here on the podcast, you'll definitely enjoy the group. And you can, again, go to Facebook and search Crushing Iron Group. And then if you're just now kind of getting to know us, you can always just go straight to our website to kind of get an overview of all the things we kind of have going on at crushingiron.com. But yes, we do. We traditionally come to you every Monday and Thursday. On occasion, with holidays or after race weekends, we might come to you a little bit later. But yeah, huge weekend this last weekend. And before we get rocking and rolling on the recap, congrats. You had a very stellar race, quietly, and congratulations, man. A well-earned day.
I really appreciate that, man. I was optimistic going in. I mean, before I go any further, this is the other thing about this podcast is it's basically started as me, the age grouper, Robbie's the coach, and we have conversations about triathlon basically, and try to figure out the sport and dig into what we can do better, what went right, what went wrong, things like that. And certainly, a lot of things went right for me on Sunday. A few things went wrong, but I think overall, I feel pretty good about that race. I felt pretty good going in. I had kind of dialed in some things later in training, but I had started a little earlier this year with my run in December and was pretty consistent all the way through, and I think that kind of showed up the other day. I felt strong for most of the run, and I didn't really feel it was a hot day, but I think we expected it to be a little hotter, or either that or I was prepared for it, and I got ahead of it like I said I was going to do. So it wasn't the heat really that got me. I thought I might be able to run a little bit better based on my training, but, first time out, that's definitely easily my best early season race ever.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you traditionally take off, let's say you race, you're a usual September, October racer. So you usually race September, October, and then you pretty much, like a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
lied dormant for February, March, and then kind of picked things back up to speed. But while you weren't super focused, which you don't have to be, you were definitely still, which I think is one of the biggest things a lot of athletes don't kind of understand, is you don't have to necessarily gain a ton of fitness over the winter, but if you can just tread water and maintain a lot of the core fitness that you built over such a long year, especially if you've done something like a full, then you really do set yourself up into great shape to produce an early season great race. And then again, it just propels you into being able to attack the rest of the season with even more focus and address things for specific races rather than continuing to kind of move yourself around from being behind the eight ball. And I think like you
Mm-hmm.
said, the results speak for themselves, and unless bad luck happens or it's just not your day, most of the times you get the race that you earned in
Yeah.
training, and I think you got that
Mm-hmm.
Sunday.
Yeah, and we had talked about it. I think about a month and a half before this race. I said that I kind of off the hand said I'm going to ride the run through this race because I had been running. I mean, that had been my focus since December, and I'm a fairly natural cyclist. But I think one of the things that there's always this thing about swimming helps the run and cycling helps the run, but nobody ever talks about the run helping anything. And I really think it helped my bike. And you said, fitness is fitness, and I think that's one of those underestimated things. I think if you kind of go hard on any block of anything, I think it's going to help the other ones. Just generally, I noticed when I got on my bike, and I started riding around the same time that I normally do. It was kind of it took a long time off from my bike, and when I got back on, I just felt almost immediately a little bit stronger. And honestly, dude, that was a pretty good ride for me, and in some ways, I felt like I had more, but I went for it a little bit and felt like I didn't overdo it, which is good. But and I know you're going to have a lot to say about this. First of all, I want to thank the 13 gentlemen that finished ahead of me for giving me motivation to move forward. I was like, man, I'm going really well out here, and I was like, I'm in the 55 age group, so I'm getting up there, and these dudes are just out there
Yeah,
hammering
they
it,
don't
man.
care.
They
They don't
don't
care,
give
man.
a.
They're slaying dragons. They don't even care. They get faster, they get older, and they get faster, and they
So
get
yeah,
stronger.
man, I'm not. I
Yeah.
think what I 21.2 on the bike, and I was like 20th in my age group on the
Mm.
bike. And then I think my run was 13th. So there's still some work to do, man. But
Still some work to do, but hey, you know, got to take what you can give you. But yeah, it was, again, congrats to you. And we had, if you've been listening at all, if you haven't, you might want to drop back and listen to a couple of the previous podcasts. But yeah, we had four, in all, on the team at least, we had 44 total athletes participating. So it was a huge weekend, and it was obviously one of our big team races. So we had everybody at the Holiday Inn at the hotel hanging out. We had a huge pasta dinner Friday night with like 80 people. Kind of did our own thing on Saturday besides our the pre-race kind of ride that we all did, which was like what seemed like a peloton, like a Tour de France start with like so many people out front of the Holiday Inn. But yeah, it was. Listen, man, it was it was exhausting as a coach, but it was one of the more fun weekends that I've had that I can remember. With so many people there, and we have a lot of thoughts about the whole swim situation, but we'll get into that for our Thursday podcast. But I thought today would be just a good day to kind of recap the race and all the things that surrounded it, and as usual, you and I kind of, one of us is either racing, the other one's either coaching, and you were racing this one and I was coaching it. So it was a really, really special weekend. It was super fun to watch, and I gotta say, I gotta give a huge shout out and a huge pat on the back to all the athletes that we had there. They were oddly quiet. I was anticipating, with that many athletes, you would anticipate some major freakouts, some major panics. So they either just didn't come to me, they came to their buddies, or they were just like very, very calm and ready for the whole thing, or they just, like I said, hit it well. But there was like little to no last minute Larry scenarios or anxiety Annies or all those kind of things. It was very chill, and I actually found it really, really fun on race day. I think it was easier, obviously, being there, because having not being there and tracking so many athletes, it would have been just like chaos total. But being there, it was also, we had so many athletes there. I had to totally disconnect from individual athlete performances, which is usually, if I'm not there, is usually not the case. Like I usually have a pretty good idea of where the athlete. I mean, I always know where the athlete has been, and I generally have a good idea of how they're going to perform on race day. You know, given specific elements of the race, given the terrain, given the temperature and the climate that they've come to. Obviously, you would have, you know, if you had two people with the same exact fitness and one was coming from Minnesota and one was coming from Florida to do the same race course, you would obviously lean towards the person from Florida probably being able to perform a little bit better to meet their fitness than you would the person from Minnesota. Obviously, just because the climate being just so extremely different with not much preparation. But so I always have a general idea of that, and then I kind of think and look, you know, what's their past, you know, personal best? What do I feel like they were aiming for today? But with so many athletes, like Iron Track was basically useless.
Yeah.
Iron Track for me was like, it served one purpose. It served as an alert that everyone got off the bike, because everyone was getting off the bike. And so that's all. As a coach, your biggest worry is just people getting off the bike. Just and not like they're not going to make the cutoff, but getting it off safely. Because, you know, there's always wrecks, there's always something, you always hear ambulances and fire trucks. It's just, with that many people on course, things like that just happen. And so my biggest worry always as a coach is that people make it off the bike course. Because once they're off, then I know I can get my eyes on them, and I know they're basically safe. So really, that's all it served. Because every time I would go and look at Iron Track to pull up someone's splits, it would go ding, 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 ding. And so it was useless. So, but it was fun because I got to just kind of stay in the moment and see the athletes when they came around, you know, out of the swim, when they come off the bike, give them a 5, and really just kind of be there for, which is what I love to do, just be there in support and, you know, provide more of an affirmation chat or a high five or a go get 'em. Than, you know, looking at numbers and places and all that kind of stuff. So it was fun. It was really, really fun in that aspect, which is very different from a lot of races that I can attend. But yeah, it was a lot. It was tiring. It was exhausting, but it was a ton of fun. And, you know, as I do have a few nitpicks with the race overall this time, the city itself, I just can't think of one that is as open and accommodating as that location is in that city for that race to have. Just, I mean, we talked about this in the race preview, I think last year, or the recap was, it's just so hard to beat the location and the race setup, where it is, and you can park your car when you get there and never touch it again if you don't want to. Mm-hmm. It just logistically makes everything so easy, especially when we do something like making our team race, where we have like events and things where you can just walk to them, walk to the swim, walk to the race expo, walk to dinner, walk to breakfast, and walk back to your hotel. It's just, again, the city itself and the race, I can see why it draws so many people, but it was a great weekend in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I'm starting to drill down on that even, regarding dinner. How many blocks are we walking versus, is it 5 blocks or 3?
It's like, yeah, it's exactly. Like, you're usually like, do I have to get in my car? Is it 10 minutes or not? Now it's like, oh man, I don't know if I can do 3 blocks.
I know that breakfast we had on hotel. Monday's breakfast was like 1 block, and then we figured out how to cut it into a half block by walking through the alley. So it's outstanding. But no, yeah, I wonder if and I don't think we're alone in that, obviously, because by all reports, there was 3,800 people registered for this race.
3,800, which was, I think the article I read was the second largest North American 70.3 ever. in terms of registrants. Now, you know that all 3,800 aren't going to show up and actually race, but that is just an insane amount for a 70.3. Which I think says a lot about, the city, and they think they can accommodate that. But, I think it did lead to some less than ideal scenarios throughout the race. And we can get into those, but I think it's just the city can hold, and it's still, and I think we talked about this, it still didn't feel like there was even like 1,000 people racing.
No.
With just how the city is laid out, because it's such a walkable and rideable city, and how the hotels are and the infrastructure, it just seemed like a regular old day, like 1,000 people, and never, like, you never waiting in line. It was great. The city itself is awesome, and I can see why people keep coming back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was not much. Like, the car traffic is really low. It's for a downtown with that many people in town.
Of course, we didn't have to drive anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, but just being able to walk out in the street, whatever. It was just so casual down there. I'd never really. We went out on that morning ride Saturday as a little pre-race ride, and there was like no cars on the road. It was pretty early, but we just had kind of our fill of the city by ourselves. We owned the place until except the one guy that drove by in a pickup and flipped me off. But other than that, everything was perfect.
Typical pickup guy.
What's that like? You're standing on the bridge, and we've got 44 active athletes racing. At some point, it had to be just like, you're always waiting, but you must not have been waiting much at all once the first group
Once
came
the first
through.
few rolled in, because we're up on the pedestrian bridge, everybody comes through twice, and it's fun because I love that area because you can see people run up. I mean, you can see people 4 times, honestly. You can see them run up out of transition, yell at them from the bridge underneath. Then they come around for the first lap. You can see them. They come around for the second lap. You see them, and then they have to turn back, so you can yell at them again. Because I remember yelling at you once I saw it. Man? Yeah, I know. Well, the last time, the only time I really put in some. You know me. I'm not a big rah coach. Like, I don't have a sign. I don't wear an outfit. I don't
No,
get
I knew
crazy
something was up when you got
read
in
a
me
cowbell and it's not me.
You got into me a little bit on that last lap.
I did, but
I knew something was up. I didn't want
exactly.
I ran blind, or I raced blind. I started my chrono when we started, and I didn't go by pace or anything. Really, I did a little bit on the bike computer, but as my race started, my chrono, I hadn't worn it in a long time, and it fogged up, so I couldn't even see the face. It was underneath the glass or whatever, and plus I was wearing contacts, so I can't really see very good. So I didn't even know what my time was, and it was probably a good thing. But as I got to the top of the bridge, you kind of gave me a little bit of a oomph from my last, I don't know, what is that, half mile or something?
Yeah, it's about a half mile, I think.
And you're like, you better get your I forgot exactly what you said, but it felt like
I had a couple choice words that were a little more firm than what I usually give, like, and then obviously,
damn it, I got to put
then
that.
Obviously,
so I put it down
I know, dude, because it is like people are like, oh, it's a downhill run at the end, but it hurts. I mean, it hurts. Your legs are already trashed, and then running downhill just hurts. And you don't want to slow down either, because it's a hard downhill. It's hard on your body, but that's the reason why I don't get all rah, and I try to stay pretty even keel, because when I do speak up and say something, it's something like firm. And obviously, I think you knew that even more once you made like the turnaround and you heard me yell at you from the top of the bridge.
Yeah, but I have to say I didn't figure it was an age group thing, because nobody said anything to me about the age group out there all day, so I knew I wasn't in contention there. But
I told you.
Yeah, you would have said something for sure. But I think so. I knew it was. I thought it was probably a sub 5, but I have to go on the record and say that I did go 4:58 something, but I'm not counting that as a sub 5.
Yeah, we'll get into that reason on the next podcast.
Yeah, and that thing's coming out next.
Yeah, I'll address that on Thursday.
But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. That's part of the deal. Overall, I think, because I want Thursday's podcast to be about the swim and some other things, but, overall, I got to say that, I think while I can understand Ironman and Chattanooga allowing 3,800 to register, you don't, it's I had a lot of feedback from athletes that it was a wee bit too crowded. I think, again, I think a lot of that issue. Well, first of all, let me just say something. If you're going to charge $300 or more a pop, and you're going to have 3,800 people register, and they all fill out what T-shirt they want, how hard is it to order an exact amount of T-shirts? Because 3,800 aren't even going to show up. Maybe even just 3,000 show up. But they ran out of shirts on like the first day. How does that happen?
The name shirts or the registration shirts?
Just for registering for the event.
Oh man, they're booking that thing like a plane.
That's insane to me. That you can't be that more prepared. And then the other thing is, and then I know a lot of it was based on the swim, but having that many people on course and then get out of the water at the same time made for a absolute cluster through transition and coming out. And then it just got, obviously when the swim got short, it just magnified into a bit, for a lot of athletes and a lot of feedback that I got was a whole, even just more drafting than you can imagine on a course like that. Was everyone came out of the water. Like, I was watching the swim exit, people were having to wait in line to basically get out of the water because there were so many people all coming in at the same time. And again, all because the swim was shortened. There was no separation. It was like, it was basically, let's just dump 50 cans in the water upstream at the same time. What's going to happen? They're more than likely all going to come in at the exact same time if they all go the same place, the same distance. And so with crowded bike course, and then I did get some critical feedback from athletes that there was a ton of drafting on the bike course, tons of groups, and then the run course, I think they either again weren't prepared really well for the heat because sponges and ice ran out after like the first loop, and that obviously there's a lot of sections of that course that are fairly narrow in terms of, especially when you get on the greenway, and the second loop became very, very crowded, which it does in a lot of races. But I just think, while you want to open it up, and I get it's about making money and letting people in, I think some of that experience can also be lost when there's so many people. But other than that, those are like, I think they're kind of nitpicky things.
Yeah.
They're kind of big, but it's still, there's always room to improve, but
I can honestly say that based on my start position and how my race unfolded, that while I did see a few packs out there on the bike course, I honestly, and I know people give me crap about it because I got busted for drafting one time, but I didn't draft the whole day, and I felt like there was a lot of room out there. But I was, top, probably one of the first, at least 500 out of the water or something like that. I think
so. Yeah, I think you were.
Based on where I started, I'm not saying I swam like a madman or anything. I'm just saying by the time I got on the bike, it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad the whole way. And I was a little miffed on the run course why the aid stations were so spaced out, or how the spacing of them. I felt like they were like a mile and a half away from each other or something, and that kind of threw me off because I'm used to every mile, right? And it seems like, especially they should have one, I feel like at the top of that first hill, because that's longer than a mile for one, and I didn't really have a chance to get any water or anything coming out through transition. Maybe they had it, I just didn't see it. But you're about a mile and a half or maybe more before you even get your first aid station on the run course, and then for one of my things was I was going to do it 2, maybe 3 goos, and I tried to do it maybe a quarter mile before I hit the aid station, so I would just be able to wash it down. Right. A couple times I put it in, and it was almost a mile, and I was chewing on chocolate cake for 3/4 of a mile before I could wash it down. So that was interesting, but
yeah,
and then the ice situation was a little sketch, and certainly sponges too. But I don't know.
I think what they don't anticipate, and I gotta take credit because I tell my athletes to take their sponges with them, is that I don't think they necessarily anticipate athletes taking sponges with them, and then just continually taking them and not I don't think they allocate as many sponges as they should. And of course, I think some athletes
dipping?
finish. Yeah, lots of double dipping, man. I think a lot of athletes totally double dip. I think I even saw some of our athletes had like 9 somewhere in their kit by the time the
No,
whole
I
day.
mean, do you think the Ironman, they'll pick them off the ground and put them back in the water?
They should.
Huh?
They should.
They should, yeah.
I mean, whatever you got to do.
I
to
mean,
help
I'm not a
people stay
germaphobe or anything like that, but I'm sure some
Listen,
people
if you're a
freaking-
triathlete and you're a germaphobe, then I don't really. I don't know how you function. You wouldn't even make it the first porta john on race morning. But no, overall, pretty good. If considering that many people in location, good city. A great city for the location. Again, it's kind of hard to, again, find a city where the race is situated like that, and it's a great locale, and I can see why so many people want to come and so many people continue to come and why it sells out. And I also gotta say there were so many lessons that I learned from a coach and just watching the athletes perform and the decisions that they made and how training paid off and we just had so many athletes that performed so well and I think a couple of them one of them that stood out tremendously and was a comment again because it took me like basically 24 and I still don't even know that like right now 48 hours like how they felt they did. And one of the guys said to me, all right, looking back on the race, my bike was 2 minutes slower than Muncie last year, but my run was 19 minutes faster. And I had a lot of guys that were like, again, because of the heat and everything, like they got a little more of a conservative number on the bike, but it was, racing a little more within themselves to allow them to perform where it mattered most, where you can gain the most time. And I just think that that being smart and patient pays off so much on a course like that, where it's just going to get hot. And I wouldn't say the run course is hard. I would say it's fair.
Right.
If it was more like the full Ironman course, I would say it's hard. But it's just a fair run course, and when it's hot and it's this time of year, and you haven't really had a lot of time to train specific for those environmental factors, you got to be prepared. But just having that athlete, and there were a lot of athletes like that biked within themselves and were able to really just crush the run. It's just a good reminder, I think, and a good lesson of how many people just continually still focus on, but I can gain so much time on the bike because it's 56 miles, yet the energy expenditure through those 2.5, 3 hours, whatever, you will just absolutely hand it off on the run. And that if you even change up and lose 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes per mile on even just a half marathon, you're giving up between 20 to 28 minutes. To see that kind of a gain on the bike, you would have to absolutely gain like 50 to 60 watts on your overall average, and so it just to see not just athletes continue to improve for their fitness, but to see athletes readjust their approach to racing smart and racing within themselves, and then applying their fitness where they know it's going to matter the most. I think it was one of the many things from this weekend that stood out to me in terms of playing the race and making one of your strengths, not just swimming, cycling, or running, but making one of your strengths execution. And because that way, there was another athlete that said, this is the first race I really, really, really wanted to just straight up execute. That I wasn't so worried at the time because they're doing a full Ironman later this year. It was, I needed to know that I could execute a race plan that you gave me and stick to it, and not have my ego or have a case of the efforts and just be like, you know what, I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to do this. I'm going to have, X, Y, and Z. I'm just going to go for it. And because again, a lot of people just say that because they don't have the faith that they're in themselves, that they're going to be able to continue execute. And it takes a lot of it. I mean, Jeremy Shearer, who will probably crack up at this, he I was giving him numbers before the race, and gave him some watt range to go, and he was like, "Dude, I gotta tell you, I'm pretty disappointed in that." I was like, "All right, I get it, but I get it. Here's why." He was like, "Dude, up till mile 30, I was ready to fire you." It's like I was just gonna eat the payment. I was just gonna block you on Facebook. I was gonna eat it because everybody was passing me. People were passing me on Pelotons. People were passing me here and there, and then around mile 40 and around mile 45, I started to pick people back off, and I was like, all right, I might keep you. And then he was like, and then obviously he ended up PRing a great PR, and he actually ended up around what I told him, what I thought his best case scenario would be if he raced like the perfect race. And he ran a under 2 hour half marathon, which he really wanted to do. But anyway, it was just funny because he was like, I was just ready to fire you, man. But I have to, like, as a coach, like you prepare these athletes with as best you can with the fitness wise, but then if you don't also try to really instill them this, like the amount, it's a ton of trust. It's a ton of trust, and you have to give so much credit to the athlete to be able to withstand that when they have the energy, like, because you're supposed to be racing, but at long course racing is so much different in that it's not just about how I feel right now, it's how I want to feel later. And I thought it was just a really funny conversation. And then obviously as he picked people off and ran people down, he was like, now I get it, and I'm so glad I have this versus not having it. But it takes an enormous amount of restraint, an enormous amount of patience, and ultimate confidence that the run training that I've done is going to pay off. And if I'm smart, then I'll be able to do this. And it was great to have just a ton of stories from athletes that were, another athlete, like I think from Muncie last year to Chattanooga this year, she only gained like 1 mile an hour on the bike, but she improved 4 minutes per mile on the run. And while that may seem like a huge fitness gain, and it's a good solid fitness gain because she worked super hard, a lot of that also can be attributed to working with athletes and them accepting and taking responsibility for racing smart and racing within themselves and having confidence that the work that they put in is really, really going to pay off. And you see it time and again, and then you also see it when athletes totally decide to just go off the reservation and do their own thing. It comes back to bite them, and you see. It's great. It's really, really fun to watch as a coach, not just watching athletes increase their fitness level, because obviously that's one of the major points of coaching and why they hired you in the first place, but it's also really fun to watch. And honestly, I think it's more fun to watch them shift mentally and emotionally how they approach the race and how they approach execution and how they become more patient and how they look forward to getting off the bike and just straight running. Because as a coach, and I would say this is the same, and I know this as an athlete too, like me passing somebody on the bike is like, yeah, this is kind of fun. I'm passing you on the bike. But when passing somebody on the run feels awesome, it is like, it's basically a finite move. And I think the feeling that it gives you and your legs in that moment just lifts you up and will just push you even when you're in pain. Like, if you're moving forward and you're the one doing, like on the bike, it might seem fun, but it's not forever. And that's the difference.
Yeah.
And that's what people just continually fail to understand is, and don't get me wrong, it's hard, especially with that bike course, because I think it's sneaky fast. And it's a beautiful course. That was also one of the things I got to give a lot of credit to Chattanooga and the course. It's just that's what I heard from athlete over and over and over again. I could do that bike course all day long. That bike course is beautiful. But it's when you pass somebody on the bike, it's for fun. It's likely probably not forever.
Yeah.
But on the run, it's probably for good.
That bike course is sneaky fast, but it's also sneaky tough. Not tough. It's kind of like you're saying. It's fair, I think, because everybody always wants to talk about the two hills. The one at mile 25 or whatever, and the one at 40, that are kind of that slow climber at the end, and then that short pincher in the middle. But what I noticed is and where I think a lot of people get hurt is those rollers that don't seem like much, that get you caught in between. And then you're are you powering over it? Are you going to take it slow? You can't. There's a lot of, not a ton, but there's quite a few decisions. I mean, speaking in comparison to the Muncie course, it's completely, In
Ohio, yeah, Muncie, Ohio is like you're in arrow 24/7.
Right, yeah, and so there's a lot of those little decisions that kind of like you got to be careful with because of the rollers and stuff like that. But yeah, it is a pretty fast course in general. And speaking of passing on the bike, the thought crossed my mind a couple times out there is like, there's times when I'm passing people and I'm just rolling by them because I'm feeling good and things are it's like it's a pass. But there's a lot of times too when you're sort of passing somebody, that's when I'm always like, damn, that was a mistake.
Yep. You're like, wait a minute.
Because you're struggling to get by them, and you're like, damn it, now you got to get out in front of them. They're supposed to drop back. They never do, and they kind of keep there on, and stay on your wheel, and you're pushing a little too hard just to get in front of them. And I probably did that 5 times or something like that. And every time I went, damn it, why? I should have just kind of hung back and looked for my spot and just really went by them, because then you get in that game of, there they are again. Oh, you again. Back and forth, and you're doing this like thing, and it's like, that's not a good sign.
Yep. And then if you see him again, like pass you at mile 50, you're like, oh,
yep,
dude. Because but that's how many, and we talk about this frequently, just how many decisions you have to make. Do I really need to pass this guy, or do I just want to pass this guy? And how is this pass and where it's going to put me? Because, I mean, let's be honest, like as you broke it down like that, like those surges add up. And if you go to pass money and it's taking you a while and you have to work to do it, it was probably not a good move. Because now you're going to have to work hard. Now you're probably also in the mentality of, well, now I don't want them to pass me. So now I've got to work a little bit harder. And then if they come to pass you, guess what you're going to do? You're probably going to speed up. Whereas you might gain a minute, but if you had just sat back and raced legally, you might have come in like within 30 seconds but saved a ton of energy. It's just like so little decisions like that. Just they add up. And it's not frequently one bad decision that ruins a race. It's like 5 to 6, 7, 8 really small bad decisions that can totally ruin a race. Usually one bad decision you may be able to get away with it if you make the rest of them. If the rest of your decisions are really smart and calculated. But if you make frequent like 5, 6, 7, 8 really minor mistakes, those really, really add up. And especially on the bike where especially dudes just can't help themselves. And let me, a small little bonus commercial. Please, for the love of all things, say on your left when you pass people. How hard is it to say on your left? I don't get it. Speak up. Use your words. Like I feel like I'm talking to my toddler. Use your words. Don't just pass people and zip by when you're 10 deep in a peloton, totally cheating your way through a race anyway. But then you don't even say anything. Bunch of freaking cheaters. And then speak up because it's always dudes. Like use your words and then stop passing people on the right and just stop being an idiot. Like, or just get off the course and go do like a Spartan race or something. But just use your words. It's insane to me. And it's just dickish. But anyway, sorry. Just ticks me off. Like as a
I know you hear a lot of that. I heard a lot.
You hear a ton of it. Like
I heard somebody who's passing in the middle between. I'm passing and then somebody comes on my right between somebody else.
And it's also like. Bro. It's also like, just get over yourself. Like, how hard is it to say on your left?
Yeah.
I really hope people instead say, like, nice things. Like, hey, good job today. Or keep going, or keep working hard. That's what you should be saying. Like, keep it up, or great job. Because you know what I also think? Not only are you helping somebody else, but it usually helps your mentality, too. To stay, like, positive and gratitude the whole time. Like, stop being, serious, Seth. I was gonna say serious Sam, but we got a Sam. He's not
really serious.
Yeah, he's serious sometimes. Don't be serious, Seth.
Oh, he's very serious.
But you saw this especially like the last, I don't know, maybe after the first probably 500 to 600 people got off the bike, 3 out of every 4 athletes were walking out of transition.
Oh, really?
Yep. And I mean, because I was in perfect position again up on the pedestrian bridge to just see how many people just smoked the bike course. And I know, listen, I know a lot of things go into that in terms of, I especially think people, when they got the shortened swim, because it's a fairly fast bike course in my opinion, thought I'm going to have a massive PR day. Or I didn't have to swim that much, so I got more energy to expend on the bike. And people just totally overdo it.
We saw that in the full last year too.
Again, yes. It's like, hey, hello, ding ding ding, remember your fitness. But it is like just there's so many small decisions that add up to great races and that add up to poor performances. And that's, I think, one of the things I just love about the sport is how much you have to think. Like, it's not just a raw power, you don't think, you just move weight sport. There's just so many, it's just, you have to think so much. You have to be smart, you have to be patient. And that's why I think it's also so much fun when you see athletes earn things, is because so much went into that. So many smart decisions, so many, not just physical decisions, but so much mental and emotional self-control, so much mental and emotional conversations. Should I even do this race? And then how do I feel? Or can I keep running? Or, I told that story about, I think on last Monday or Thursday, I think it was, about the athlete that had texted me and was like, I'm not going to PR this race. I just don't expect to PR this race. I shouldn't expect to PR this race. Even though she had like the best probably 4 months of training in her entire life. Which I'm not saying that's not a fair thought. It's not fair. It's a fair thought. Because if you've had like a huge PR on a very easy course with cool conditions, and you're coming to a harder course, this was a harder course with hotter conditions, then I think that's a fair thought.
Mm-hmm.
But when you speak it into reality, it becomes something different. And I had to kind of try to at least rewire that thought process of, I don't really care much that you think it, but don't speak it into reality, because now you're going to give it energy and power to make decisions, or you're just letting it creep and set up shop and take up real estate in your mind. And we just don't need that. And we ain't got time for it. And then I think she ended up with like a 30-something, 40-minute PR. Wow. And I was like, see, like, that's like, you can't predict. As much as we like to use the old triathlon, we like to predict how races are going to go and how races are going to happen. It takes so much to go into it, and one wrong decision can make up a race. But that's why I love it, because there's so many things you have to think about. And I think that's also why it's overwhelming. And one of the reasons why we do this podcast is to hopefully help athletes sift through and answer some of those questions before they become unanswerable questions on race day, where you have to jump to a conclusion or jump to an answer that you're not super confident in. And we got, again, we you and I both love it, and we got a lot of good feedback after this race from just listeners in general who tried their best to listen to some of the tips that we give based on execution, and it working out well. But it's the mental and emotional aspect of the sport is so underrated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and kind of on that point, you really haven't, I guess, arrived or gotten to where you need to be until you can get that rundown. And I was just kind of looking this morning earlier through our athletes' races, and while I'm sure some of them aren't completely happy with their run, it looks like, man, there's a lot of running out there. And I was really happy to see that most everybody I was looking at was running that race on a hot day,
Mm-hmm.
And like, as you said, there was a lot of people walking, and there always is. And until you can get that run down, you've got room to improve. I mean, there's like an endless, ceiling there to keep going, because that run is what it comes down to. And like you said, if you can't play that bike smart, of course, that's repeated ad nauseum, but just the fact that mentally you can get to the place to actually run that. And I've talked about it many, many times ago. It's like, just run the run. And it's tough a lot of times, but I was really happy to see all those, splits. It was
just race. Yeah. You need to race it so you can run the run.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just, again, it's just something that, because especially like once you get up to the Ironman distance, it is, your bike split basically doesn't matter, because people can just churn away so much time on the run, and they will just run you down. And it just, it takes patience. It takes a lot of trust in yourself. It takes a lot of belief in yourself to do it. But I think once you've done it, once you've got one of those good ones under your belt where you've executed great, and you're like, I get it. And then it becomes even more about even better execution and probably pulling the cork a little bit earlier. But as a coach, and again, like, because the bike course is like, every bike course is basically super unspectator friendly. Like, there is nothing more fun as a coach to see athletes flooring it, like on the pedestrian bridge on that second loop, like just giving it hell, and like just flying by. And it gives you just, it gives you like the chills, just to like, that's what we do. We finish strong, we run hard, and we pace things smart. But then again, as athletes do, it's, well, I wonder if I could have pushed a little bit harder. Because that's what everybody will say.
For sure.
I wonder if I could have squeaked a little bit. Like I was asking a guy who went sub 5 for the first time after really going after it a couple times, and he was like, the first 30, 35 miles, I thought, I think I can push a little bit harder. And then he said around mile 40, 45, he thought, I made the right decision.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to feel like you biked. I mean, you're going to feel like it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say like it's not like you got up off your couch and went and ran a half. But you shouldn't be like, oh, I've got to dig into my reserves just to keep pace. It should be, like holding the lid on the pot that's trying to boil over. You just got to hold it on there. You want to bubble it, but you don't want to lift it, and then till the run, and then let that thing pop. Because the great thing about that is that at least now you also have your wits and your fitness about you, so you can make great decisions. Because whatever that famous boxing quote is, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Well, most people allow themselves to get punched in the mouth and the gut on the bike course, or coming out of transition at a T2. Whereas if you can delay that thought or feeling or obstacle until the run, then you can act like, I'm so close. Now you can manage, and now you know who you are on race day. Now I've got my legs. I don't have my legs, and my stomach's feeling good. My stomach's not feeling good. I think I can pull the cord here and just give it hell and go after it. Or, gosh, it's getting hot. Man, they're out of ice. My nutrition hasn't been great. Let me just try to hold pattern and still manage a good race and a good performance, versus just having to be forced to throw in the towel. It's like, it's I guess, to go back to another boxing analogy, is people who go for it on the bike go for knockouts in like the second or third round. And then they're going to end up tiring themselves out, or they're going to get knocked out themselves. Whereas you want to be someone who's patient, technical, specific, with a plan of, I'm going to win this bout, not I have to make a knockout right now. And, you and I used this analogy like a long, long time ago when we talked about baseball, is, even training's about small ball, but guess what? so is racing.
Mm.
It's about small ball. It's about getting on base. It's about staying on base. It's about getting hits. It's about staying in the game and letting things just continually come around and good and not swinging for the fences. And the bike is where everyone swings for the fences, because I think it's the speed of it that gives you that like energy and that thought and that feeling. But I can tell you that it 100% totally evaporates once you find yourself walking or having to have a terrible run and having everyone pass you. But
on the last cast, I talked about that golf analogy of driving it down the center and or giving, allowing yourself a little variance. And I really did feel like I approached that bike that way. I was kind of had a number in my head or whatever, but I was not sticking to it too hard. I was just rolling. I got to tell you, dude, this is I think the first time ever on the bike course where I wasn't. There was a couple of times I missed the mile markers. Like a lot of times on the bike, you're like, mile 20, 25, I got, and you start adding that up. But I wasn't even thinking about that. It wasn't like a beating me down thing. And that continued through the run. It was almost like, you said earlier, you have your wits about you. And, you kind of still maintain that, you still have some boil left in that pot or whatever. And that was kind of the feeling that as I was, even when I hit that second loop of the run, I wasn't going, oh, shit, I got a second loop. It was more like, oh, wow, that was mile 8. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying I was that, I don't think that definitely wasn't even my PR on a half run, but, it was a PR feeling for sure. And that was the thing that it was kind of like you said. I don't know if it's one of those things that as you race and you kind of start to understand things or get that feeling like you can maybe move it to the next place. That was sort of what it was. And I remember, I think the only sign I really even remember was mile 10 on that run, and my thought wasn't, oh shit, 3 miles. I was more like, oh, only a 5K. And that was the first time I've ever thought that way. And it was a really cool feeling. It's like what's a 5K? That's when I run from my house to the whatever place on the bike path.
Yeah, because it was the feeling you had was I'm still in control.
Yes, that is exactly what it was. And
it's like to have that feeling to make, because what happens is if the longer you're able to perform, the better fitness you have and the better decisions you make and the better your training and the better your preparation, you can elongate the amount of time that you're in control of the race, not the race's control of you. And so many athletes give up and give in and hand over the control of the race to the race itself in the midway through the bike. And then they get off, and then guess what? Now the race owns you. Now the race is going to dictate your day. You're not going to dictate the race. And so to have that thought and feeling going through the first loop or going to the 5K and thinking, just a 5K? Like, I'm in control right now. I can control whether to push it or stay back, not I'm forced and slowed to this because I can't. I'm no longer in control. Right now I'm on the total defensive. I'm just mitigating loss by the poor decisions that I made or lack of preparation or lack of execution or whatever it is. Sometimes people have great fitness. They just make really terrible decisions. But yeah, it is. It's that there's nothing better than that. God, just a 5K and to feel in control of you are still getting to make the decisions to push it or not push it or to wait or not wait. And there's no better feeling than to have that late in the race. But it's also so hard to keep sight of when the day is so long. Gosh, it's like the run's like 2 hours away. But it just comes down to patience, and it comes down to execution and being confident and trusting in themselves and buying into that belief of it's not what matters now, it's what matters most in the end. And it does. It's again. It just has so much credit and to the athletes that whoever you are on course, in regards to if you're an athlete we work with or not, to have that amount of control and self belief to hold things in so you can control the run it's really something special. And it was fun to watch our athletes do that and perform and run well and do their best on what's a fair run course and a hot day. That a lot of athletes, like the ones that we had, especially, were coming from, a northern area where they hadn't seen anything above 50. So it's kind of like a summer punch in the gut. But it's it was fun to watch. But I got to say, and we talk about this, and I'm sure people get annoyed, but I don't honestly care that much. Is, I mean, what do you know me to care? I don't. I mean, it's like we have, and I'm saying this because we had multiple. You probably didn't hear them because you probably did because you were on course. But I had so many people walk up to me and some of our athletes on race day and after the race is over, while I was still going, people were cheering and just say how much they got from the support of our team. And how they could see why it was we have the team that we do, but we just have, and I'm sure there are other great ones out there, I have no doubt, because there are pretty awesome people in the world for the most part. We just have some of the most amazing, selfless, and humble athletes that I could have ever possibly imagined working with as a coach, and to see them go out there and race smart and to do their race and to do well, and then to not retreat within themselves but to come back out and to cheer on the last finishers was just really cool to watch. And it's always fun, I think, for me, and I know you too, is to see how much bigger this whole thing is than you or I. And I think it's hard to explain. Like, there was an athlete that came into the lobby of the Holiday Inn on Saturday and was like, is it kind of fun to see, does it get to you or whatever to see like people wearing the brand or our logo, or how big the team has gotten, and honestly, this may sound weird, I don't know if it's bad or not, but it doesn't really do anything for me. But it's the people. And I think that on the outside it might look like you and I have created something, and I think why we kind of open the gates with an opportunity. But the people that we have on our team, like, they are the ones that attract other people, not you or I.
Mm-hmm.
And to see like how fortunate you and I have been to have these kind of people come into our lives and then stick around and then reciprocate that by attracting other like-minded people who want to be a part of the community. It's nothing to do with you or I, and that's not even the success of it. It's the success of it, and the success of the team is the tight-knit community and family feel that our athletes have created.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you and I built a house, and we just opened the door, and the athletes have walked in and created it and made it a home. And that's the biggest difference. And to see them out cheering and always basically seeing each other on course, that's like one of the things that brought us originally to put together these team races, and just the amount of energy and support and brotherhood that was out there was just really, really special to watch. And I know specifically that they impacted positively so many people out there as well that weren't on. And we had spectators, athletes that came in just to spectate from, hours and hours that flew in to spectate and drove, 7-8 hours to spectate, and it's just mind blowing how just, and as much as we, sometimes me specifically, riff on, some of the more negative attributes of people in the sport, it's just so refreshing to see people who genuinely care about other people first and then their results after. Mm-hmm. Instead of, and because we get questions like that, is it for everybody, or it's like, no, we have people on the podium at these big races, and we have people, doing their first one, finishing, more towards the back of the pack. It's about personal performance. It's not about you have to have a specific result. It's an open door policy for the right kind of person who's, we have it's just blown away. Just an amazing team that does everything for each other, with their best interests in heart. Get the shirt off their back and will be there for them. And it was incredibly special. incredibly special to watch and be a part of. And I know out there racing, you got a whole different feel of it with seeing so many people out there on our team. Just being around in general, I think has to just fill you up and give you that extra bit of anything that you might need at every point of your race.
Yeah. And, it really inspires me to kind of keep up the same mentality that our group has, and that's just kind of that not quit and be there for other people. But, like in the group, Steven asked a question. He says, fellas, I've been listening to the podcast since around episode 60. To see 44 athletes at a race is impressive. Y'all's ever think it would turn into something like this? And
Y'all's.
And, and I posted, certainly not after the Dogcast fiasco, but I was really, my first inclination was absolutely not. And, you just basically answered the question for him. I mean, this is something that emerged and we just started doing our thing and thankfully attracted awesome people. And I think one of the things is I think, like you said, there's just awesome people everywhere, but there's something that can happen in every community, and triathlons included, where there can be negatives, and you can kind of find yourself. And I think you would admit, and I would, that it's easy to go down a wrong road in this sport and get sort of a negative attitude, or even get more isolated, I guess is the best way to put it, and sort of like you're battling against the tide the whole time. And what happened was we just started meeting more and more amazing people that were just open, friendly, supportive, and the whole 9 yards, and it just sort of took a life of its own in a way, and it's contagious, and it's really changed my attitude about a lot of things. I mean, I can say that openly. Triathlon can be a grind, and if you don't have a good support group around you, it's just a lot harder. And it's easy to get negative, I think.
And I mean, I think you brought up such a great point in that, triathlon can be so isolating, and that it can be like hard to find a group to fit into. So some people probably actually conform to fit a group they don't really feel comfortable being in, but the thought of not being in a group is greater than the irritation it might feel that they have to kind of change or project a different person to be a part of a group. And that's also out there, and like you said, it's like, we are insanely fortunate to have attracted in the beginnings and gotten lucky enough to work with some just amazing people that are also amazing athletes, and they have really opened the door to. It's like, because we had a lot of athletes that came to this event as the first time, like the first time meeting me in person or meeting the team, and they're like, I can't believe how open and welcoming these people are. Like, they're just like, as soon as you walk in the door, you're now officially like part of the family. It's not like, a lot of cliquish clubs that you see where, you're not welcome, or you have to do X, Y, and Z, or you have to do an Ironman to be welcome or whatever. It's just like, hey, you family.
And I'd like to say that crosses boundaries into, it doesn't necessarily, you don't have to necessarily quote unquote be in the group. I mean, we're, as you said, we were sitting in the Holiday Inn, welcomed everybody and their brother in, and you can almost see it, because this is how I would have felt walking into a situation like that. I would have been like, oh, well, I'm not in the group, I don't really belong here. But I could see almost a little hesitation, but, our athletes are just so welcoming. It's just like, it's nothing, it is about the group, but it's not, and I don't think there's a barrier put up that you can kind of see sometimes when there's, people are so proud of the shield or whatever you mean.
That's such a great way to put it. They'll be proud of the shield. But no, and so yeah, huge shout out to our team, just because you and I are both just so incredibly proud of them and what they've accomplished and what they've created and the doors they've opened for other people to be a part of, and it's fun to. I mean, it's just a expanded version of growth of what you and I aimed at when we started this podcast in the first place. was that we felt there were people who wanted to connect because, I think there's this misconception that like you have to be in like a local tri club to feel like you're part of something. And I think there's a lot of positives to local tri clubs, but I also think there's a lot of negatives. And, it's like, we're like, all right, well, I'm living in Kansas, you're living in Nashville. We don't really have anybody to talk to. So we're going to talk to each other, but we still feel like there are other people who probably still feel the same way from all over the country, all over the world, who like, I don't either like my local tri club, or I don't feel welcome, or they're just not my people, or I don't even have a local tri club and nobody even here even knows what triathlon is. And they have no idea. I just want to be a part of something, and I want to be around and surrounded by and feel comfortable with other people doing it and feel welcome. I feel like I'm part of something greater than just myself and my individual training peak schedule. And that is what, we started to do. And, for whatever reason, people seem to not hate it. And now here we are.
Here we are. Speaking of Tri Club, how do we do? Did we?
No, I think we were in the top 5. I need to look. They don't do Tri Club rankings anymore based on participation. They do it based on, I think they take your top 5 best results, and that's how they score your points. So if you have like 10 people in your club and you have like 5 people that just absolutely dominate everybody, then you're probably going to win.
Oh, they don't add up the whole group points anymore?
No, they changed the way that they do the club rankings.
Oh boy! Well, this is a good spin into what our next podcast would be. Ironman, man, what are you guys doing? What's the point here?
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, speaking of which, I got to go.
Okay. All right. Well,
no, I don't have to go, but I'm going to go. Actually, I felt really pretty solid at the next day. I feel pretty good, like after racing, but my arms feel like they haven't gotten any workout lately, so I'm going to have to go swimming.
Yeah. Well, make sure you cut it short.
Well, no, that was just sort of the lead into our next podcast.
Yeah, that's a good teaser from
I'm going to go swim because I haven't been swimming at all lately.
Former news guy. But, yeah, Chattanooga, 2 thumbs up. As a spectator, I give it 5 out of 5 stars. I didn't race it, so I can't give it a star. I'll let you do that.
2.5 stars. And there's a...
Hey! Woo! So an average of 3.5. Well, we'll cover that on Thursday.
But a big chunk of that is for what we're going to talk about on our next podcast.
But again, thanks for listening. Hope we got something out of it. For all the other things that we do, you can go to crushingiron.com. There's more info on our coaching and training packages, our training camps, swim analysis, our blog, gear, and the club. Go to it, check it out, peruse it. Hit all the tabs, find something for yourself, and we will check you on Thursday.
All right, buddy. Oh, did you give our emails? I can't remember.
No, I didn't. You can reach out to Mike for all the things fluffy and fuzzy.
What is that?
crushingiron@gmail.com.
Come on.
If you want to rip about the podcast and say things you don't like, you can just hit me up. C26coach@gmail.com.
All right, man.
All right, dude. See you Thursday.
All right. Bye-bye.